Ye. So what we're looking at here is the Article 2, you know what I'm saying, Section 3, 5, 1, presidential immunity to suit and official conduct. In the article, you can see here Article 2, Section 3. It says, he shall from time to time give to Congress, you know what I'm saying, information of the state of the union and recommend their consideration, such as measures as he shall judge so shall such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary extraordinary occasion, convene both house or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to times of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive an ambassador and other public ministers. He shall take care that the law be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States. All right. Now, when we go here, we see here where it says in in its 1867 decision, Mississippi versus Johnson, the Supreme Court established that the president is largely beyond the reach of the judiciary by holding that it could not direct the President Andrew Jackson in how he exercised his properly executive and political power. The court, stated it had no jurisdiction in joined the president in the performance of his office and duties. Okay. In the subpoena decisions, however, the court made clear that Johnson does not stand for the proposition that the president is immune from judicial process. For example, in the United States, versus Nixon, the court held that the president, Richard Nixon, crooked Hayes, was, amendable to a subpoena, to produce evidence for use in the federal criminal case. There, the president, creepy as Nixon, had argued that he was immune. See how they do that? And he was a demon Democrat at that. The same one that brought in Anthony Fauci, the murder-ass weasel. You know what I'm saying? Who had been murdering even prior before that, using that biological attack that he just used on us, on the people once again. But we see what the president had argued, Richard Nutcase Nixon, that he was immune. He was immune, according to his overstanding. He was immune to the judicial process, claiming that the independence of the executive branch within its own sphere, insulates a president, from a judicial subpoena in an ongoing criminal persecution, crucifixion, if you ask me, when it comes to Trump. The Supreme Court unanimously disagreed, holding that neither the doctrine of the separation of power nor the need for the confidentiality of high level communications. With, without more can sustain and without more can sustain an absolute unqualified presidential privilege of immunity from the judicial process under all circumstances. The court noted that the constitutional duties of the courts to do justice in the criminal prosecution, you know what I'm saying, was counterbalanced by the claim of presidential immunity. To accept the president's argument, the court further reasons would undermine the separation of power that was at the core of the workable government, as well as gravely gravely or whatever, or as gravely impaired the roles of the court under Article 3. Look it up. Throughout the Watergate investigation, it was unclear whether the president could be subject to a criminal prosecution, because Nixon definitely needed to be crucified, if that's me, you know what I'm saying, prior to being convicted upon impeachment. The court, however, resolved Trump is not being impeached because he's not the president. Resolved that the courts may require the president to testify testify or produce documents in the criminal proceedings. This principle dates to the early days of the Republic, you know what I'm saying, in more ways than one, when Chief Justice John Marshall presided as the circuit judge for Virginia over the treason trial of Aaron Burr. In that case, Chief Justice Marshall concluded, you know what I'm saying, he concluded, one second people, he concluded in this matter, you know what I'm saying, in Virginia, concluded that the President Thomas Jefferson could be subject to a subpoena to provide a document or documents, you know what I'm saying, in more ways than one, you know what I'm saying, provide, one second people, one second here, to provide, to conclude the president could subject to a subpoena to provide a document relevant to the trial. Specifically, Chief Justice Marshall declared that, in contrast to common law privileges afforded the King of England, the President was not exempt from the general provisions of the Constitution, like the Sixth Amendment, look it up, which provides the defense compulsory process, the defense compulsory process. Nonetheless, Chief Justice Marshall, you know what I'm saying, recognized that while the president could be subject to criminal subpoena, the president could still withhold information from disclosure based on the executive privilege in two centuries since the Burr trial. The executive branch practice and the Supreme Court ruling unequivocally, I know what it means. Okay, so the word sometimes I get tired out. And practically, you know what I'm saying, practically, you know what I mean, endorse the Chief Justice Marshall position that the president was subject to federal criminal process. In its 2020 opinion, you know what I'm saying, in Trump versus Vance, you know what I'm saying, the court extended this proceeding to state criminal proceeding, including that the president was not absolutely immune from the criminal subpoena. You're changing the law as you go along, if you ask me. Finally, with respect to the civil liability, the court held in Nixon versus Fitzgerald that the president is absolutely immune in actions for civil damages for all acts within the outer perimeter of his official duties. The court, you know what I'm saying, closed decision was the premise on the presidential unique position in the constitutional scheme that is the court conducted is that the court conducted a kind of public policy analysis the the policies and the principles that may be considered implicit, I guess, implicit or whatever, you know what I'm saying, in the nature of the president office in a system structure to achieve effective government under the constitutionally mandate separation of power. Although the Constitution especially affords members of Congress immunity in the matters arising from speech or debate, and was silence on the presidential immunity the court nonetheless considers the immunity to be a function mandated incident, you know what I'm saying, a functionally mandated incident of the presidential, you know what I'm saying, of the president unique office root in the constitutional traditions of the separation of power and the supported by our history. You know what I'm saying? While the court relied in part upon its practice of finding immunity for office, such as judge for whom the Constitution is silent, but for which a long common law history exists, and in part upon the historical evidence which it admitted was the fragmentary, you know what I'm saying, Terry, and, you know what I'm saying, ambiguous or whatever. The court focused on the fact that the president is different from all other executive officials. The president is charged with a long list of uh, what subversive in policies, responsibility, and utmost discretion and sensitivity and diversions of his energy by concerns with private lawsuits would raise unique risk to affect the function of government. Moreover, the president privilege is chill out. Is moreover, you know what I'm saying, the presidential privilege is rooted in separate of power document counseling court to tread carefully before intruding, while some interests are important enough to require judicial action. The court reasons that merely private suits damages based on the president office official based on the president official acts do not serve this uh, broad public. You know what I'm saying? Interest in the necessitating the court act finally qualifies immunity would not finally qualify immunity would not adequately protect the president because judicial inquiries in the functional analysis of the action would bring with it a evil immunity. It was to prevent absolute immunity absolute immunity was required. So in other words, to me, he is immune. He is immune. But they're changing the law to fit a different perspective, as we see. So this is point blank saying, look up the facts. Let's dig deep. One.